Have you ever wondered which Asian countries might teeter on the edge of collapse in 2025? Could it be economic powerhouses like China or India, nations that seem unstoppable? Or perhaps countries like Pakistan or Sri Lanka, which have already faced their fair share of struggles? Or could it be a place you'd never expect, one that's flying under the radar? Asia, the fastest growing and most dynamic continent, is not immune to the storms of change. From looming economic disasters to unraveling political systems, the challenges facing these nations are as shocking as they are unpredictable. The stories you're about to hear are filled with twists and turns that will leave you stunned. Which country will claim the top spot in this unsettling ranking? Stay tuned as we unravel the unexpected and dive deep into the forces reshaping Asia's future. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment saying, "I subscribe," and I'll personally welcome you to our community. Now, let's dive in. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Number 10. China. Let's talk about China, the world's second largest economy and a global powerhouse. But even the mightiest giants can stumble, and China is grappling with a perfect storm of challenges that could reshape its future. China's once booming economy is losing momentum. The housing sector, which was a major driver of growth, is now in turmoil. Companies like Evergrande have defaulted on billions of dollars in loans, creating ripples across the financial system. Local governments, heavily dependent on land sales for revenue, are now struggling to stay solvent. Decades of the one-child policy have left China with a shrinking workforce and an aging population. By 2025, over 20% of the population will be over 60, putting immense pressure on social welfare systems, healthcare, and the broader economy. This demographic shift threatens to slow growth even further. Ongoing disputes with the United States and its allies are disrupting trade and technological advancements. Sanctions, trade restrictions, and decoupling efforts are creating economic headwinds that could further isolate China in the global market. Severe air pollution, water shortages, and other environmental issues are exacerbating the nation's problems. These challenges impact not only the quality of life for millions of citizens, but also the productivity of key industries like manufacturing and agriculture, adding strain to an already fragile economy. Rising unemployment and inflation are eroding consumer confidence. Meanwhile, a struggling manufacturing sector, once the backbone of China's economy, faces stiff competition and slowing demand. If these challenges go unaddressed, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for China, but for the entire region. The ripple effects of an economic or social collapse in China would destabilize global trade, supply chains, and political alliances. China's story is a stark reminder that even the most formidable nations are not immune to internal and external pressures. The question is, can China adapt and overcome, or will these cracks continue to widen? Stay tuned for the next entry on our list as we explore more nations on the brink. Number 9. Pakistan. Next, we turn to Pakistan, a nation with a rich history and vibrant culture, but one grappling with severe economic, political, and environmental crises that threaten its stability. Pakistan is in the throes of a deep economic crisis. By 2023, inflation had soared to an alarming 27%, and the Pakistani rupee had lost over 30% of its value. The country faces crippling energy shortages that are stifling industries and hindering economic growth. To stay afloat, Pakistan remains heavily reliant on International Monetary Fund (IMF) bailouts, which often come with harsh austerity measures that burden the population further. The political landscape in Pakistan is marked by chaos and division. Protests, corruption scandals, and an increasingly polarized government have created an environment of uncertainty. This instability makes it difficult for policymakers to implement meaningful reforms, further compounding the nation's challenges. Floods and other climate-related disasters are taking a devastating toll on Pakistan. These events have displaced millions, destroyed critical infrastructure, and strained already scarce resources. The country's vulnerability to climate change continues to grow, adding layers of complexity to its recovery efforts. Ongoing security issues in regions such as Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa add another layer of difficulty. The persistent threat of terrorism and insurgency not only destabilizes the country, but also diverts resources away from development and recovery efforts. If Pakistan cannot stabilize its economy, address political divisions, and mitigate environmental and security challenges, it risks falling deeper into crisis by 2025. The compounded effect of these issues could erode public trust, disrupt international partnerships, and push the nation further toward the brink. Pakistan's future depends on decisive action to address these interconnected crises. Can it rise above these challenges and forge a path to stability, or will these pressures lead to deeper turmoil? Stick around as we delve into the next nation facing a critical crossroads. Number 8. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka faced an unprecedented economic crisis in 2022, marking the worst downturn in decades, and its path to recovery has been painstakingly slow. By the end of that year, the nation's public debt soared to an alarming 120% of its GDP, while foreign reserves were nearly exhausted, forcing the country to default on its international loans. This financial meltdown triggered severe shortages of essential goods like food and fuel, leading to widespread public unrest. Inflation spiraled to over 50% in 2023, making even basic necessities unaffordable for many Sri Lankans. Tourism, a vital sector that once fueled the economy, has shown signs of recovery but remains significantly below pre-pandemic levels, further hampering growth. Adding to the turmoil is the ongoing political instability, characterized by frequent leadership changes and persistent public protests against the government's inability to implement meaningful reforms. Without robust international support and comprehensive systemic changes, Sri Lanka's fragile economy risks further collapse, potentially plunging millions into poverty and intensifying social unrest by 2025. Compounding these economic and political woes are environmental challenges. Widespread deforestation and soil erosion are severely undermining the agricultural sector, a cornerstone of Sri Lanka's economy that employs a significant portion of the population. Without urgent adoption of sustainable practices, these environmental issues could exacerbate the nation's economic fragility, leaving Sri Lanka at a critical crossroads. Number 7. Myanmar. Myanmar continues to grapple with the devastating aftermath of the military coup in 2021, which plunged the nation into economic and political turmoil. The coup has led to crippling international sanctions, a free-falling currency, and widespread poverty. Armed conflicts between the military junta and resistance groups have displaced millions, creating a severe humanitarian crisis that shows no signs of abating. Once a promising economy with potential for rapid growth, Myanmar's economic trajectory has reversed sharply, contracting significantly in recent years. Foreign investments have evaporated, and access to basic services such as healthcare and education remains out of reach for vast portions of the population. This combination of factors has left the nation teetering on the brink of collapse. The broader implications of Myanmar's instability are equally concerning. The influx of refugees into neighboring countries is straining regional relations, while the ongoing conflicts risk destabilizing Southeast Asia as a whole. Without a clear path to political reconciliation, the restoration of democracy, and substantial economic recovery efforts, Myanmar faces a bleak future. The nation's inability to stabilize could result in further isolation, deteriorating living conditions, and a ripple effect of instability across the region by 2025. Number 6. North Korea. North Korea, long veiled in secrecy, faces dire internal struggles that can no longer be ignored. By 2023, the nation's economy is in a state of collapse, battered by international sanctions and decades of self-imposed isolation. Food shortages have escalated to critical levels, with reports of famine surfacing from rural regions. The regime's relentless focus on military expansion has siphoned vital resources away from essential sectors like healthcare and infrastructure, leaving the civilian population to bear the brunt of the crisis. Compounding these issues is North Korea's reliance on trade with its primary ally, China, which has significantly dwindled amid a global economic slowdown. This reduction in trade has deepened the economic strain, further isolating the nation from the global community. The outdated infrastructure exacerbates the crisis by limiting the efficient distribution of the few available resources, creating bottlenecks that worsen the humanitarian emergency. The unpredictability of North Korea's leadership only heightens the risks. Should the situation deteriorate further, the country could face a humanitarian catastrophe of unprecedented proportions, with ripple effects that threaten to destabilize East Asia. Without meaningful reform or international intervention, North Korea's path forward appears increasingly perilous. Number 5. Afghanistan. Afghanistan remains in turmoil after decades of conflict, with the return of the Taliban to power in 2021, compounding the nation's struggles. Economic isolation and severe international sanctions have pushed millions into extreme poverty. Once reliant on international aid, Afghanistan now faces widespread food insecurity, with nearly half of its population experiencing hunger. The country's banking system is on the verge of collapse, and skyrocketing inflation has rendered basic goods unaffordable for many. Women's rights, once showing signs of progress, have been drastically curtailed, leading to widespread international condemnation and further isolating Afghanistan from the global community. Infrastructure development has stagnated, and a mass exodus of educated professionals has resulted in a debilitating brain drain, stymieing the country's progress. Without significant intervention, Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis could deepen, bringing the nation to the brink of collapse by 2025. Adding to the challenges is Afghanistan's reliance on the opium trade, which not only fuels instability, but also diverts resources from meaningful development efforts. This illicit economy perpetuates corruption and undermines attempts to achieve reform. Afghanistan's future hinges on addressing these multifaceted issues through robust international support and systemic changes, but time is running out. Number 4. Lebanon's economic crisis, one of the worst in modern history, shows no signs of abating. By 2023, the Lebanese pound had lost over 90% of its value, erasing life savings and plunging a vast majority of the population into poverty. Over 80% of Lebanese now live below the poverty line, grappling with soaring youth unemployment and skyrocketing inflation. The country's infrastructure is crumbling under the weight of prolonged neglect and mismanagement. Frequent power outages and shortages of essential goods have become the norm, further deteriorating living conditions. Political paralysis, coupled with rampant corruption, has stalled much-needed reforms, leaving the nation unable to secure the international support it desperately needs. Adding to Lebanon's woes is the ongoing Syrian refugee crisis, with over 1 million refugees seeking shelter in the country. Public services and resources are stretched to the breaking point, creating tensions within an already strained society. Without urgent reforms and international intervention, Lebanon faces the real threat of total economic collapse by 2025. Such a scenario would not only lead to mass unrest within Lebanon, but also destabilize the broader Middle East region. Number 3. Bangladesh. Bangladesh has been a beacon of economic progress in South Asia, but the cracks in its foundation are becoming increasingly visible. Climate change poses a severe threat, with rising sea levels threatening to displace millions and recurrent floods and cyclones damaging vital infrastructure and agriculture, two key pillars of the nation's economy. The garment industry, which accounts for a significant share of Bangladesh's exports, is grappling with global market shifts and rising production costs, threatening its sustainability. Political unrest and corruption have further undermined investor confidence, stalling economic momentum. Urban centers are straining under the pressure of rapid population growth and insufficient infrastructure, exacerbating social tensions and creating barriers to sustainable development. Meanwhile, rural areas suffer from limited access to quality education and healthcare, hindering the development of human capital essential for long-term growth. If Bangladesh fails to address these vulnerabilities, the country risks an economic downturn that could undo decades of progress by 2025. The widening gap between urban and rural areas could exacerbate social inequalities, making recovery even more challenging. Only through bold investments in climate resilience, infrastructure, and human capital can Bangladesh safeguard its future and continue its trajectory of growth. Number 2. Laos, one of Asia's poorest nations, is grappling with mounting economic difficulties that threaten to push the country further into instability. By 2023, its debt-to-GDP ratio had soared past 90%, with a significant portion of this debt owed to China. Much of this financial burden stems from large-scale hydropower projects that were intended to generate revenue. However, these projects have proven to be risky investments, as droughts and volatile energy prices have disrupted income streams. The Lao kip has sharply depreciated, driving up the cost of imports and intensifying inflation. These economic pressures have left citizens struggling to afford basic necessities. Despite efforts to boost development, infrastructure projects have progressed slowly, while pervasive corruption continues to undermine growth and investment opportunities. Laos also faces significant challenges in diversifying its economy. The country's reliance on a few key sectors, coupled with a lack of technological advancement, has left it ill-equipped to compete in the global market. This stagnation not only deepens poverty, but also stifles potential for innovation and progress. If Laos fails to secure international support and implement reforms to stabilize its economy, it risks severe economic instability by 2025. Such a scenario could plunge large portions of its population into poverty, further straining social services and exacerbating inequality. Without urgent action, Laos may face an even more dire economic future, with limited prospects for recovery. Number 1. The Maldives. The Maldives, often hailed as a tropical paradise, is facing existential threats from climate change and economic instability. Rising sea levels are relentlessly eroding its islands, jeopardizing the tourism infrastructure that serves as the backbone of its economy. While tourism showed a promising rebound post-pandemic, the country's heavy reliance on imported goods makes it highly vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions. Public debt has surpassed 100% of GDP, raising alarm about the nation's financial stability. As a small island nation, the Maldives faces significant limitations in diversifying its economy, leaving it heavily dependent on external factors for survival. If international support and adaptive measures are not implemented urgently, the Maldives risks not only economic collapse, but also the loss of significant portions of its territory by 2025. Communities are already experiencing displacement due to rising sea levels, and critical infrastructure is under constant threat. This uphill battle for survival is compounded by a rising cost of living, which has created stark inequalities within the nation. These disparities further limit the ability of local populations to invest in long-term resilience measures, making the challenges even more daunting. The Maldives stands at a critical crossroads, with its future hinging on its ability to adapt to climate challenges and secure global assistance. The stakes are not just economic, but existential, as the nation fights to preserve its unique way of life and its very existence. Which country shocked you the most? Do you live in any of these countries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Want to know which are the 10 most educated countries in 2025? Click on the video appearing now, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay informed and updated.